Hi, everybody, and welcome to the channel. My name is Amber, and this is Fundie Freed. Today, we have a special guest, Megan, and she is the founder of Baptist Accountability. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I've been friends with her on social media for about a year now, and she's phenomenal to follow. And I'll link her information down below in the description box. So, welcome, Megan. I'm so excited to have you today.
Thank you, Amber. I'm so happy to be here. This is
Yay!
exciting.
It is extremely exciting. So, tell me, where did it all start? Where did you come from? Kind of like, what's your background?
Sure. It's kind of a long story, but I'll try to pare it down. Um, I was raised in a pretty fundamentalist circle. Okay, so I went to a Grace Brethren church, which is very similar to Baptist. But what I feel had more of an influence on me was my school. I went to a non-denominational Christian school from pre-K through 12th grade, the same school all the way through. And it was technically non-denominational, but really most of the teachers and things were fundamentalist Baptists. Am I saying that right? IFB, Independent Fundamental Baptist.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you. That wasn't my denomination, so sometimes I trip on it. But so anyway, what I found out years later, I didn't know any of this, but of course now that school is currently in the news because there was one of the teachers was molesting girls and spanking them till they blistered and bled, things like that. He actually just got sentenced in August to 10 years with 5 years suspended, which is
That's not long enough. It's never long enough.
these sentences just kill me because people who don't pay parking tickets get longer sentences than these guys. So
Yes.
he did get sentenced though, and the school covered it up for all these decades. So they knew and they hushed it up. So in the midst of, I was kind of helping to advocate for the victims in that situation and who, are years later after everything happened. I mean, this is 40 years after the fact, they're coming forward, and statute of limitations was over. Fortunately, he confessed. If he had not confessed, they would not have been able to do anything.
Wow.
I know. It was really amazing that the police questioned him and he did confess. Okay. So all that to say, now, as we're going through this with all the alumni, we're all chatting. We're like, oh my word, yes, we see the signs now looking back. All of us felt creeped out around him and whatever. And a friend of mine sent me this article and she said, I'm just reading a book and our school, there's like a whole chapter on our school. I'm like, what? And she sends me, and you can Google it. The book is called Unholy and something about Trump. I don't remember the rest of
I like how they're both together.
I know, right? I know. And so it's all about Christian nationalism, all the things like John Wayne, all these books coming out now.
Yes.
So this is on this topic. There's a chapter in this book specifically on my school. And it turns out, so we learned a lot of history about the school that none of us knew. It was started in the late 60s as a response to the anti-segregation laws. And you've heard of this already. A lot of Christian schools were started for that purpose. It was when the anti-segregation laws came out, Christians were like, well, we don't want our kids to mix. So we'll start these private schools and they'll be tax exempt and, all this stuff.
Yeah.
So my school was one of those schools, a segregation academy. And the guy who started it, I wish I had more of these facts written down so that I could speak more clearly, but the guy who founded the school was named Robert Billings. And he went on to be part of the whole religious right, that huge movement, Billy Graham, and all that's talked about
Yes.
in Jesus and John Wayne.
Yes.
He was one of those guys, and he went on to be a pastor at, and I'm so bad with names, but it was one of the big IFB churches.
It wasn't Jack Hyles' church, was it? Up in Indiana. I lost the name in my brain just
I
now.
know, I can't even remember offhand. I'd have to look it up. Maybe, I mean, I could look it up real quick, but yeah, it's just absolutely amazing to me that this is the history of my school, and
Right.
things that are talked about in Jesus and John Wayne and all these books coming out now. It's true. Like, it's
Yeah.
absolutely true. It's exactly the start of it, and what it has ended up in is just horrific abuse everywhere.
Yep.
So yeah, so that is the start of my story, and I went from there. I'm just gonna, let's see if I can find this real quick. Robert Billings. Trying to see if I can find where he went.
What's really kind of just a little plug here, or not really a plug, because I don't want to promote the school, but I actually went to a Christian school my last 2 years of high school.
Yeah.
That pastor was also, who was the principal, was molesting and sexually harassing all the female students, and also having an affair with one of the teachers, with his wife knowing the whole time. He got caught about 7 years ago. They forgave him,
Oh,
let him keep the pastorate, and let him keep the school. And he just got caught again, this time arrested earlier this year on on molesting, sexual assault, sexual battery against minors at the school, and is now going to be charged. He's in, finally,
it's just
after
amazing.
all this time.
Decades to get this stuff done, and they just keep moving on to the next church. That is
Yes.
what drives me crazy. So, okay, from Hagerstown. So Hagerstown's where my school started. So it's talking about from there, from when he started that school, he continued his itinerant pursuit of Christian schools. He became the administrator of a Christian school in Elmira, New York, and then in 1970, the principal of the New Hammond Baptist High School in Hammond, Indiana, which was affiliated with First Baptist Church, a fundamentalist independent Baptist
Yep.
church.
That's
That
Jack Hyles.
was Jack Hyles. Yep, it says right there.
Yep.
So I just couldn't,
That's just
followed,
mind-blowing.
followed Preacher Boys, and I kind of knew who Jack Hyles was from him, but I didn't. And then when I saw this, it all just like, what?
They're all connected. They are all interconnected somehow.
Well, wait till you hear how the story ends. Okay.
Oh gosh. Okay, here we go.
Here we go. So I leave there and I go to Messiah College.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a very homesick person. Like, I wanted to be close to home. I didn't want to travel the world or anything. So I went to Messiah because it was an hour away and I could come home on the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually ended up getting involved in a cult on campus. It was started out just as a Bible study. It was charismatic, sort of Pentecostal. I mean, it wasn't considered Pentecostal. It was based on the teachings of Andrew Womack. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but
I'm not familiar. No.
he's a televangelist who's like a multimillionaire and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, it was based kind of on his teachings, and gradually became a cult in a year's time, I would say, and hardcore. Like, by the end of 2 years, they had been kicked off the campus, but we still stayed part of it. My husband and I had gotten married. He had graduated. We've gotten married. And they started even to the extent of moving people in with us. Like, single people were moving in with married couples. That was kind of getting to be, and your belongings weren't your own. They would come through houses and just clean out and give your stuff to other people in the group or put it in the dumpster, whatever they felt like, whatever God told them to do. Is incredibly, incredibly controlling. And we ended up, when my best friend at the time, when she threw her wedding ring, and her husband threw their wedding rings in the trash, I kind of like snapped out of it all of a sudden. I'm like, wait, this isn't what I want. Because the leader was saying, our marriages, our original marriages weren't of God because we hadn't dedicated ourselves to the degree we are now. So now it's like we're starting over.
Whoa.
And he had been grooming several girls in the group. He ended up sleeping with one of them. He was married with a child. Ended up sleeping with this girl and like seducing her away. They're still together, actually. So interestingly, Dom and I ended up leaving at that point, but about 6 people stayed in the group. By the way, my husband has blogged this whole story, and it really is riveting. I mean, he's a very good writer. On our website, churchtrauma.org. If anyone's interested, it's called the Narrowgate series because the name of the group was called Narrowgate. So
Yeah.
anyway,
And I'll definitely link that below. So if anybody wants to read that, there they can click on that. That would be great.
yeah, it's a really interesting story. Um, Unfortunately, but we did get out, and the girl so 6 people stayed. Within a few months' time, everyone had left him except for the girl he had seduced, the young woman that he had kind of seduced and left his wife for. They disappeared. Um, Her family, so years later, this is really weird, but because of what happened in our final church, not the next church,
Mm-hmm.
Dom decided to start writing this story. And when he wrote this story, he's like, I got to talk to people. Like, I want to figure out what happened back then, 25 years later. Okay, this is been out
Mm-hmm.
of college a long time. So he contacted the college chaplain, who is still actually working in some ministry respect at Messiah College. He was just contacting people from that time that we still knew where they were, to ask questions like, what do you remember about the time? How did you see this? And we ended up reaching out to the woman who he ran off with, the cult leader. I can just say his name is Liam. I'll say his name in the writing. My husband changed the names. His real name is Andrew Wirtz. I don't care about hiding it anymore, but
Mm-hmm.
on the article, or on the story he writes, he called him Liam. So I'll just call him Liam. The woman that he ran off with, her parents, we found out then through this process, had not seen her or talked to her in 26 years.
Are you serious?
We had no idea.
Gosh.
And Dom found her, he found both of them online, not too long before this. So he told, it was her sister that we talked to. So he told her sister, I know where she is. Here's her information. They didn't know where she was now. They had found addresses in the past and things, but
Mm-hmm.
anytime they would try to find her, call anything, they would say, oh, nobody lives here of that name, or, they just,
Right.
I don't know how hard they tried either, because they really did think, oh, she's just gone. They kind of mourned as if she was gone forever. I'm like, oh my word. So, and we had found videos of them online and gave all this to the family. It's been quite a process. Just him blogging that was this whole new thing, but I have to back up again. So we escaped that cult, basically went from the frying pan into the fire, because we ended up going to a charismatic church local to us that basically taught all the same things. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
not to the same extremes with the marriage, but everything else was pretty much the same. And it was also incredibly abusive. And I feel like for me, I started out in this fundamentalist, rigid, dry rules, and the charismatic just really appealed to me because it seemed so free and so like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, let's worship God and the spirit and all the things. And
Yes.
it was every bit as abusive there, every bit. No sexual abuse that I know of. I don't doubt for a second. that it has happened at that church over the years. But
Yeah.
very spiritually, incredibly spiritually abusive. Dom and I have been talking about this in therapy and stuff recently, and we feel that that church actually did more long-term harm to our thinking and everything than even the cult that we were in for 2 years in college. So we stayed at the charismatic church for 7 years. Finally left that for a myriad of reasons. But then we were like, okay, so that was bad too. Maybe we just need to return to the basics, because we didn't know anything about my school. We didn't know about abuse things or anything in the
Right.
fundamentalist Baptist stuff yet. So we thought, okay, give me a pipe organ and a King James Bible, and we're going to be safe, right? Like,
Yep.
the word. We are just going to be in the word, the word, the word, you know.
Yep.
Go back from all the spirit woo woo to, okay, this will keep us.
Yes.
Yes. Oh my.
Little did you know.
Little did we know. Oh, this was a very small town church. Beautiful people. We fit in so well. They became our family. We were there 12 years. We loved it. We thought it was wonderful. And then it started to just get not so wonderful, but we couldn't put our finger on why. And then one day, the head pastor, who had been there forever, and it was his dad's church before him, and he loved this church. He left, said God led him elsewhere, and like no warning, just I'm leaving. And we're like, yeah, that's not right. So
That's weird.
I don't buy it. Yeah. So anyway, he kind of admitted to us, sort of, that. I mean, without admitting, because he had basically, I don't think he had signed an NDA, but he had to verbally agree that he would not say anything about why he was actually leaving.
Right.
So we stayed a little bit longer, a couple more months, but I started having panic attacks in the church services, and I couldn't explain that. I didn't know why at the time. I just knew I'd have to, like, I felt like I was just gonna fall apart, and I'd have to run out of the building and walk outside the rest of the service. And then I started for a few weeks just staying back in the nursery, thinking, okay, well, just say I'm going to be extra help, because I can't do it. But I was crying in the nursery. And not only was I crying in the service in the nursery, we would get in the car and I would just be like wailing, and just couldn't get myself together. And this would last till like Tuesdays. I mean, I just would be so cold. It turns out, now I realize these were trauma triggers from the cult. My body was feeling the control that was starting to come in. Like, it was starting to get very, like they were preaching sermons that were very spiritually abusive. And I didn't pinpoint in the moment, but I see it now. They were preaching sermons on don't gossip and forgive even when you don't know what happened. And if you have questions, come to leadership. Don't talk about it with other people, all that kind of stuff. Policing us. Like, there was one man that would go around, and like if two women were chatting after church, he'd even come over, hey, what are you guys chatting about? And you felt like totally policed. It was insane. So I told Dom, I'm like, I can't do this anymore. My health can't take it. Like, I don't know what's wrong, but I cannot even do this. I can't go back one more week. And you can go with the kid. We have 5 kids. I'm like, take the kids. That's a big thing to say by yourself.
Right.
But I can't do it. And he's like, no. Like, one thing about him, I will say, like, he has always just been, we're a team. We do everything together. If you're not okay, I'm not okay. So we're all stepping down. And he emailed that day and told leadership, we're stepping down. He was worship leader. I was nursery coordinator. Anything, that we did. He's like, we're just done, and we're taking a sabbatical. He didn't say we were leaving permanently.
Right.
Didn't even give them an explanation as to why. One pastor reached out like a week later and asked if he would meet and discuss why. Um, and he said, and he's like, I don't know, just things are going on there, and you guys won't talk about it, and there's obviously something wrong, very wrong
Right.
between leadership, and nobody will talk. So anyway, we're gone for about 2 months, and one of my friends, I kept in touch with 2 people from there that were really close friends. Everybody else treated us like they didn't even realize we were gone. Like, you don't exist anymore because you're not showing up on Sundays.
Yep.
It is nuts. It is wild.
It
But
is.
2 friends my age that I did keep in touch with. And the one, I was talking to her, I was like, this might be my cult, like, overreaction speaking, because I'm just so harmed, but I just wonder if there's sexual sin behind this, which I don't even use the word sin anymore, but I did then. So,
Right.
I don't know if there's sexual sin behind this. What's going on? And she's like, oh, I don't know. And then she's like, well, did you know about Don Foos's conviction? Now, Don Foos was now the head pastor. He had been the associate pastor for most of the years until that head pastor left. Now he was the main pastor. And I'm like, convictions? No, I don't know anything about that. She said she got kind of quieter. I was like, you just need to do background checks. Just do background checks on all the pastors. Mark and I did that. Oh, I said his name. Her husband's name is Mark.
I can edit that out.
Edit it out. You can. I don't think she cares at this point. I won't say last names, but she said we did background checks on the pastors years ago, about 8 years ago, I think it was, and found some things out, and you just need to do that. And I'm like, okay.
Anxiety.
So I
Oh
get
my
on
gosh.
the phone, and I'm just like freaking out, and talking to Dom. I'm like, listen to what she just said. So let's do it. We knew how to do it because I had headed up the whole background check thing for our nursery department. For anyone who's working in the nursery, when the law changed here in Pennsylvania, you had to have background checks to work with kids. And at the time, I remember talking to the previous head pastor who had left, had told me that I didn't have to worry about the pastors because one thing, they weren't working in the nursery, and the second thing was they were already taking care of their checks and everything through the school that the church ran. They ran a preschool and kindergarten. And I'm like, okay. So I didn't think anything of it. Looking back, I'm so mad. I'm like, I should have not trusted that. I should have just checked for myself. But how horrible. Anyway, so we ran the checks, and it takes a week or so to come back. So I just got on and started Googling. And the first thing that comes up is Don Foos's, where they revoked his teaching license from being a school teacher. And it literally had a quote in that said he is considered a danger to the children of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. What? And I look through, and it's like mentioning, convictions, and I'm like, what is happening? Like, we've known this guy 12 years, never, heard anything. Like, what is this? So we get the background checks back to confirm before we say anything, Then we're like, oh my word. I think the first thing I did was call Megan's Law, or no, I called Childline first, I think, and just reported it. And I said, here's the deal. Like, I don't know if this is legal, but he's the pastor of a church where kids are all the time. And yes, he's interacting with my kids every Sunday for 12 years. And he's superintendent of the school that the church runs. I'm like, so, oh my gosh. And they're like, oh, well, actually, I don't think it's illegal. And I'm like, because there's loopholes because it's a Christian and it's run by a church, and I don't know. And I think that's actually, but it's interesting. Even the police, when there ended up being an investigation, they don't even know the law. I found out. I mean, I was asking them questions and they were just talking out there. They didn't know what they were talking about either.
Oh my gosh.
So really frustrating. We told the friend that told me about, get the background checks. I said to her, well, why don't you guys take care of this? It's your church now. We're gone. Like, we already left. They're not going to listen to us. Yeah, well, it didn't turn out that way. They did meet and said, okay, so look, the Benningers know about Don's convictions, which they had known, but it's like good people even. And really, these friends really, they turned as soon as they realized it, they like did a 180. Oh my God, what were we thinking? Because I said, what I think made it click was I said, well, because she kept saying, well, we know him, and it was a false accusation, and I heard the story. It was just, his teenage daughter being, a teenage girl, and, wanting to rebel against. And I'm like, how do you know that for sure? And if he's convicted, like, that's pretty, you don't just get a conviction you have to have proof to get a conviction. Yeah. And I said, plus, even though you know him, imagine how you would feel if it was another church preschool and you were sending your kid to another church and it was somebody you didn't know was the superintendent there and you found out they were a child molester. Would you care that it was a false accusation? Would you care at all, or would you just be furious?
Right.
And that really, she was like, oh my gosh, you're right. You're right. I don't know why. She just wasn't thinking about it that way. And so they brought it to leadership. And of course, the way they said too, they're like, well, the Benningers know, and they're not going to be quiet about it. And so they were like, oh, tell them we wish they would have talked to us first before they started gossiping.
What?
Oh, yes, we were gossiping. And as it went on, we were tools of Satan. This was an attack of Satan. And, they had to pray for us because we were just being used by Satan and, gossip and all that stuff.
A bunch of heathens exposing such things.
I know, ruining the reputation of Christ.
Right?
Oh my
God. I'm actually boiling inside right now. It makes me so mad.
That's how I get when I hear other people's stories. I'm like, oh my word, like, how does this happen? This can't be happening.
Yes.
And people knew. So they say when they hired him, they didn't realize it was a conviction. He did tell them the story that he had something in his past that he couldn't get his background check done, but it was a false accusation, and it was just his daughter, she was rebelling and whatever. And they just took his word for it. They never did a background check, never anything. And in fact, when they questioned the state, this is a Southern Baptist church, by the way, and there are associations and things. And our state, we have 2 state associations that covered our church. And the one who really was the most involved, that director of the association, he doesn't have any real authority, but when they interviewed him for the news, this was written in USA Today. There's an article, by the way. And when they questioned him, he said something, it's quoted in there, but the reporter told me even more, that he said, well, I like to keep my mind pure, and I don't want to put things in my mind that will be impure, make me think impure thoughts, basically.
What?
So children are being raped, but at least your mind is pure.
Let me be Pilate and let me wash my hands over here.
Right? Unbelievable. Like that.
Oh my God.
That man, I'm going to name him Larry Tyson. He went on to be on a national committee for the Southern Baptist Convention to make recommendations to the National Convention about child sex abuse.
No. Mm-hmm. Oh my God.
I know. So he went on.
Oh my gosh, I'm so mad.
All the SBC stuff. I know. Oh, you're about to get a whole lot madder because.
Oh man.
So we're getting shunned and even harassed. Then we had. It was just awful. We were doxxed. My daughter. Then this was actually a year or 2 later. Had 4 nails in her car tires. I mean, this has been going on for like, it's like Scientology level, fair
Yes.
game type, ridiculous harassment. Some of it dangerous, like
Mm-hmm.
threatening. And we've had to get security system. We talk about moving all the time, but we don't do it. But anyway, it's kind of calmed down now, but it flares up every once in a while, especially if we go public somehow. Usually when there's the for such a time as this rally, there's a yearly rally, and we're
Mm-hmm.
sometimes asked to speak for that now. And if we do, then we get some weird, harassment again, and it's just crazy. But all this to say, so before this was written in the story and whatever, we're just living this out, and like, what do we do? What do we do? It's not
Mm-hmm.
illegal. It's not like, what? Well, it turned out that the head pastor that had left wrote this big long letter spelling out everything, that he had seen over the years and had been hiding. I mean, there's no other way to put it. He thought he could handle it and had it under control and could just keep on top of the situation and watch the guy.
Mm-hmm.
Don Foos kept not listening, when they were saying you can't be near the kids. Well, he was with my kids all the time. They were on his lap. They were, rough.
Oh my gosh.
I even remember my kids being in bathing suits and him helping them. They had this big blow up water slide thing, and him helping the little kids up the stairs
Ew.
in their bathing suits.
Oh my gosh.
But there are just so many things I look back on and I'm like, oh my word. So fortunately, none of my kids they say, I mean, we've questioned them and told them, like, you will not get in trouble. Like, he will get in trouble,
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Right.
I don't think anything happened to them. We do think he was grooming our oldest daughter, from looking back and just seeing some pictures that were really concerning, where there's a series of pictures this one time and you can literally see it's at a VBS, and it's of the whole auditorium, and it's like every like minute almost. I don't know why the photographer did it. Was just taking pictures of the whole room from up high in the back of the sound booth. And
Yeah.
you can see Don Booth because he has this bright orange shirt on, and you see him very purposely move around the room. Well, first you see him look over at my daughter, who's at the other end of the row he's on, she and a friend, and you see him looking over at them. And then you see him getting up and moving very deliberately, slowly around the room. He even goes up in the front. He loved to be the center of attention. Went up to the front, is looking all at the kids, and then walking back the center aisle. And he's walking back, and he ends up so my daughter was there were rows of chairs, and she was in the second from the back row. He leaned over the back chair and was like this, and like looking at their butts in the last picture.
What?
It was unbelievable.
Oh my
It was
gosh.
like watching a predator stalk their prey. I mean, it was so obvious. I'd love to show you the
Yes.
pictures. It just blows my mind when you look back.
Yes. I'm like, that's
We
just insane.
we combed through pictures and things because you're like, what was happening here? Did anything happen? Did we miss signs? And
Right?
we did miss signs. Um, there's another one where she was working at this table for, I don't know, some outdoor activity we had, and I think she was making either popcorn or snow cones. I don't even remember, something like that. I mean, she was sitting at a booth thing
Yeah.
working, and it was at those fold out tables, the 4-foot tables, and he came right up beside her, and he was always goofing with her, like teasing her and whatever, but he's right at the corner of the table, right beside her, with his junk up on the corner of the table, like right near her hand. And I'm just like, ew, 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 ew.
Ew.
And it's
Makes you want to go chop it off.
right.
I'm going to Lorraine Bob at that right
Well,
now.
let me tell you, my husband was pretty close. I mean,
Yes, I'm sure.
he really, I mean, this was a test of like everything in us to like come across this, and you're like, you just feel like, hold me back. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just unbelievable. And the worst thing is then, even after all this, we found out as we're, well, no, actually, we hadn't done the story yet. We were trying to contact media, local media, tried and tried and tried, and they would not touch it. They just wouldn't touch the story. Then we found out, somebody found online that he had been preaching at a Southern Baptist church 20 minutes away. Now, this is after, so the church that we were at, I mean, this is over months. I'm kind of skipping periods of time. At first, they weren't telling the congregation they were going to let him retire without saying anything, but then the gossip got too bad. Oh, and they were going to give him a huge severance.
Of course they did.
Of course. Well, they did. They ended up not doing it, but they were going to, till the gossip got too bad. And then they did make him go in front of the church and confess. He confessed to about 1/1,000,000th of what actually happened. They just minimized, do the bare minimum. He made it sound like he tripped and brushed her breast accidentally.
Oh my gosh.
But we read the police report. We called, and you can do this. You can call the courthouse. You can get court documents. You can called the I can't think of the word. The person who keeps up with them afterwards.
Oh,
you know what I mean? I can't think of the word.
I know what you mean, but it's like right there. I'm like,
yeah. But anyway, that person still working there after 20 years. This happened 20 years ago, the conviction, Yeah. But it's still working there, so still remembered the case, everything, and we ended up having the police record read to us, and it was above the waist, below the waist, under the clothes, over the clothes, really everything, like not rape, but I mean, not like, I shouldn't say not rape, not penetrative rape, but
still sexual assault.
Exactly. Yeah. And he had 2 convictions from this, but the reporter told us it looked like he pled down from a felony. It should have been a felony, but he probably got a plea deal and ended up only serving 9 months in prison.
My gosh.
So anyway, then we find out, as I say, that he's at this other church, and we're like, well, I guarantee you he didn't tell them what was going on.
Right.
So I'm like, I'm done. I'm done with this nonsense, and these men in these positions are not doing the right things. I just got on Facebook and I made a public post, and I said, Don Foose, who just, destroyed a church because it came out he was a convicted child molester, is now preaching at Carlisle Baptist Church, blah, blah, blah. And I said, please share far and wide. And I shared it everywhere I could, and other people shared, and word got out. Well, that was the end of the world. That was so inappropriate. And
how could you?
Not the proper way to handle these things.
Right.
Like, really? Because the proper way is going so well.
Right. Oh, well, let's just let him do a confession and move him silently to another church.
Yes. Oh, I was so mad. And all I think is more kids are into, he's going to be molesting kids left and right, and nobody's going to care.
Yes.
So anyway, when I made that post, everybody was furious with me. My husband wasn't even too happy about it, but he was okay. And he then wrote a big long email to the pastor, proper way, the male contacting the men
of course,
the church, not, the woman should not be doing these things.
You don't have the right body part to be able to do this.
No, and I was not under his authority when I did this.
Right.
So anyway, that was interesting. So he wrote this big long email and spelled it all out, and he tagged our old church in it. It was like, if you want more information, please contact Oakwood Baptist, where this just happened, and blah, blah, blah. So turns out they didn't know. And one thing that I had my husband do was, and I think this is important for anyone listening who wants to report things to churches, email groups of people. Do not email one pastor or even 2 pastors. Email the pastor, all the deacons, all the elders, whatever you have, the whole leadership at one time, because then they cannot ignore it and just shove it under the rug, because too many people know then. And so we did that with this. We're like, yeah, we got to copy everyone on their leadership. And sure enough, like, we're not sure yet if the pastor knew or not. He was old golfing buddies with Don, so he might have known,
Right.
but the children's pastor or children's coordinator didn't know, and nobody else knew. Anyway, I could go into that story forever, but as it turned out, I had to have a showdown with them. I asked the friend who had told me about the convictions. She and I worked together through this, and we called both the state associations now this time, or the other. I know it was the other one that I can't remember. Anyway, one of them, and it's been a while now. And they said, yeah, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do. All we can do is strongly recommend that he tell his congregation, because every congregation is autonomous. I'm so sick of hearing that. I'm like,
Yes.
and I was very upset. And they had me talking to their lawyer. I talked to them once at the association, then they passed me on to the lawyer for all the rest of it. I'm like, oh. And I said to this lawyer, I'm like, look, this isn't harming anyone's autonomy to give information. If there's a storm coming and you just tell somebody, hey, there's a storm coming, they still have autonomy to stay out in the storm if they want to. You're just letting them know it's coming. They can still keep the child molesters preaching at their church if they want to, but you can't tell them. I could do it. They're like, well, you can. I'm like,
why?
Yeah, because it's my job, and already, I haven't put my family in enough danger. We're literally getting like threats, like,
right.
And you cowardly men cannot even inform people. You want the women who aren't even supposed to be doing this because we're women, but we can do this. We can inform them. It's just unreal. So I did. I had to have a showdown basically with that pastor by email. They wanted to meet, and I said, I will meet, but I will be bringing a reporter, and I will be recording it. And then they were like, sorry, you won't agree to meet with us. That's too bad. I'm like, I didn't say that. I just gave you my criteria. I'm like, I'm happy to meet. This is just what's going to happen if we do.
Right.
It was like gaslighting, unbelievable. Anyway, so I ended up just emailing that pastor. I'm like, look, they can't confirm to me whether you have informed your congregation or not. So you need to do it. And I said, and you have until, I think I gave him 5 days. And so you have until this and this date to inform your congregation. And if you don't, I will, by whatever means necessary. And at that point I was in contact with someone from their congregation who was a parent who was furious, who had found out because of my Facebook post and said, no, the church doesn't know. None of the parents know. Anyway, she had offered that I could use her church directory if it came to that. To contact.
Nice.
Yeah, but it didn't come to that because I, gave him this ultimatum and crickets. And meanwhile, I just want to say, everyone clear up to the national level of the SBC was copied I started copying all the way up to the national level. So Todd Unzicker was copied, and he is J.D. Greer, who was the president of Southern Baptist, was at that time. Todd Unzicker is his right-hand man. So yeah, we were tagging everyone. Crickets when I did that. No one even responded. No one chastised me, but no one responded.
They like to put their head in the sand.
Nothing. Yeah. And finally, the night before the deadline, that pastor said, okay, Megan, I have informed my congregation. And I had given him very clear, like, you need to inform them, not just like someone in his name, the names of his convictions, what he was convicted of, and that he was spent time in prison, because that's important,
Yes.
You know exactly what. Well, he said, yes, I did do that. And I checked with that woman, and she said, yes, he did tell me that today. It was that day. But so anyway, had this showdown there. And so Dom and I were just like, oh, and we found out he had preached at another church in Virginia that was a Southern Baptist church without telling them. And so we're like, this is just unbelievable. And we started to hear all these stories from Southern Baptist churches, and then IFB, even worse,
Yes.
Baptist in general is just horrendous. And
Yes.
we're like, well, we can't follow these guys around forever. Oh, and we were having to contact places where the other pastors who covered up were trying to get jobs as pastors' places. And we're trying to like warn those churches, like, don't
You're
hire
chasing
people.
fires.
Like, what? How can this be happening? Yeah. And so we're hearing that then we start finding out throughout all this that this isn't just us. This is an epidemic problem, systemic problem in Southern Baptist. And then we met Krista Brown, who was one of the oldest survivors of abuse in the Southern Baptist Church that has been speaking out. And she had been asking for, I think, over 15 years for a database, for the Southern Baptist Church to do a database, like, to track things. And they just won't do it. Oh, it's too legally, we can't do that, whatever. And we're like, yes, you can. Like, and my husband and I started thinking, we looked at a website called Rate My Professor, and we're like, you can rate professors. You can listen to what these kids are saying about these professors.
Right.
And they're not getting sued. And they even have on their legal page, they're like, you can't sue us. This is free speech. It's allowed. Try it. They even they tell people, try to sue us.
It's amazing.
We will counter sue. And I'm like, oh, I love that. I love that attitude. At first, my husband was like not sure still that it could be done, but he's a tech guy, so that's what he does for a living. He figured it out. We did it. We set up a database. It took less than a month for 2 people to set up.
That's amazing. And the entire SBC, we can't do
over
this.
15 years couldn't figure it out.
Right.
We get the right legal, whatever. We haven't been sued yet. We've had letters of, what do you call it? Cease and desist.
The cease and desist. Yeah.
Which that was a learning curve to figure out how to handle those, but it's getting easier as time goes by. We're learning more, getting better lawyers that understand, and I didn't understand that either. Like, we didn't know whether, first we were working with a child abuse lawyer advocate, which seemed like the right thing, but it turns out what we actually needed more was a free speech lawyer. So, you have to get the right kinds of lawyers, but it was a learning curve, but we just jumped in and did it, and we were fine, so it's just really aggravating. They still haven't done it. We had one state association reach out to us that wanted to do a database a couple months ago. They still haven't done it. Like, nobody's just done it. There's nothing. So what we have is what there is, and we're not even doing it perfectly. I mean, I don't ever want somebody to feel like this is just what 2 people can find and do, and what we are making public. We have an entry form. People can enter. Right now, we are requiring some form of identification, or not identification, sorry, documentation, that at least either a news story or an email or something, a police report. Because, I mean, there are false accusations. They are very rare, but they do happen. And, we are trying to be, cautious. Ethical,
yes.
Right? I mean, we're not just, anybody can write in and say, oh, so-and-so molested me,
Right.
I actually would like to be able to do that, but
right. It would be so nice.
I think there are so many people that want to speak up and haven't had a news story and can't make that happen and don't have evidence. There's rarely evidence of child sexual abuse. Rarely.
Very rare. Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of my story. Now we have a database.
Now you have a database, which is Baptist Accountability, right?
BaptistAccountability.org. Yep, no spaces or anything. If you guys, ever want to check it out, I think we're getting close to 1,000 entries now.
That's so sad. I mean, I'm glad it's there, but it's so sad that there's already almost 1,000.
And that's like, I guarantee you that it's the tip of
just a drop in the bucket.
I can't remember the statistics. If it's between 3 and 10%, I think, that are even ever reported to anyone, let alone have we found them,
Yes.
So, I mean, there's probably, who knows?
And I mean, I may be off base a little bit saying this, but I feel like sometimes the abuse in the church is more hidden than maybe in the secular world, because we are so conditioned to keep everything so inside and contained in that nucleus that we rarely are able to speak out about it or feel like we can.
Yeah, and it's like, you want to be forgiving, And I get that. People want it. But God forgives and people deserve second chances. Yes, they do, but not with children.
No.
They can have a second chance working anywhere else, not with kids and not in church.
Exactly. Exactly.
They're in a position of trust and families trust them, and then they get into people's homes and abuse their children. It's
exactly
not okay. So give people second chances, just not near children. They
exactly
have as many chances as they want, as long as it's away from kids.
I 100% agree, because it's so dangerous, because I know even in my own experiences that I have literally seen these abuses happen, and then they come before the church and they're like, please forgive me. And now that's in the past. God's forgiven it. Now you need to forgive it. You also need to forget it happened. You're not allowed to deal with it.
Right. It was a one-time thing. It's never, ever.
Never.
If you research the statistics, there are studies on this. The average number of abuses, now I don't think this is individual people, but it's 150 is the average number of abuse times the person. And that might be the number of victims. I can't remember. The book on it is Predators by Anna Salter, where all the statistics for this are. If anybody's interested in statistics, that book will blow your mind. And how they target churches, like child molesters really go after churches because they do forgive, and they are trusted there and welcomed in, and they just take advantage of it, and it is rampant.
It is.
And if you say it is not your church, you do not know that. I would have never thought it was my church, of all churches ever. It was happening right under my nose, and nobody knew it. Don't say it's not the church. If you haven't heard about it, chances are it's just being hidden better than in the other churches.
Absolutely. I do not believe there's not one church that it does not happen in. I don't believe that.
I don't believe that either. And when you say that, though, people go crazy. Not every church. These are just a few broken cisterns. I'm like, these are not a few broken cisterns.
No.
It is everywhere. You just aren't seeing it because it's hidden, and you don't want to see it. You're not looking for it.
I think it's that cognitive dissonance that we have, where we separate things in our mind whenever it comes to church and religion. Like, even if we see that it's wrong, we don't recognize necessarily the signs of it at the moment, because we're so conditioned to just walk on this particular path and believe these particular things. So there's no way it could happen here, because all of us are great people. We're serving God. We're in ministry together. We're doing all these things. That's those people over there. For the independent Baptists are like, it's the Southern Baptists.
Right.
They're the ones with the problems.
Yeah. And everyone there, independent fundamental Baptist is the absolute worst.
It is the worst, because they're so autonomous that they have no one to report to. So people literally can disappear from one church to the next church because there's no connection.
Well, and that's why I did want to mention, for our database, we accept any and all Baptists. I wish we someday might expand to non-denominational, because that's another hidden. They say they're non-denominational, they're Baptist, but
yes.
They hop, and they hop from IFB to SBC to whatever Baptist to non-denominational, because it's all such a similar theology that they fit in. They know the right things to say. They know how to look good, how to work the room, and the theology supports it. Sadly,
it does.
The forgiveness.
Don't question the man of God. Don't question the men in authority. Don't talk bad about them. What is the verse that they throw out all the time, at least in the Independent Baptist Church? Don't muzzle the ox that treadeth out the corn or the wheat, or something like that. And I'm like, no, you just don't want us to call you out on your crap, is what it is.
You want to keep molesting children.
Yeah, you still want to keep abusing women,
right?
And
children, all of it. It's sick.
Yes, it is disgusting.
We didn't even get into the patriarchy.
No, we need to do a whole nother episode on the patriarchy.
Construction. Oh my
Man,
gosh, just the
we
whole.
could do a whole thing on that because that I'm actually wanting to do an episode eventually on just Christianity and the patriarchy and like obliterate it because it's so toxic. It's so bad.
And it's so pervasive in all of society, yes, but the
Yes,
root of that is Christianity.
100%.
Because it's based on, everyone's, oh, but we're a Judeo-Christian nation. Yep, we are. And that's why this is so bad.
Yep.
Yep.
And the people that came over that obliterated the Native Americans and took over were all reformists and Puritans, and they had that same ideology.
Yes, they
It's
did.
all in there. Oh, man, that's another topic that makes me mad.
Oh, me too. Me too. I mean, I know. I feel like, oh my gosh, it just drives me crazy. But the children's was what gets
Yes.
because, I mean, women too, absolutely, like all of it. But for some reason, I think
But
because I have 5 kids and this happened to my kids were like seeing. I protected my kids so much. I was that mom. Like I homeschooled them. I didn't let them go
mm-hmm.
places without me. I didn't let them go on sleepovers very rarely and only if I trusted the family implicitly. The one place that I let one kid sleep over ever, he was an abuser too, it turns out. He was another pastor at our church. There was a second abuser at our church, it turned out. I mean,
Isn't that just so sad? I'm the same because I am a victim of child molestation
I'm so
from
sorry.
men in authority in a church, and I have 3 daughters, so this is like so like
Right.
it gets to me
Not
on
touch
such a personal level
it
on
really, I
all
mean, it's
fronts.
that mama bear thing. We just
Oh yeah,
do not go after my
don't touch my kid. Don't even come close to my kid. Don't breathe in their general direction,
yes.
kind of thing.
And to think, like I did, I was that mom, the overprotective, like no public school for my kids. I'm gonna like be right there with them and one on one. We're gonna have this relationship. And I just thought I had them so safe.
Mm-hmm.
Satan comes as an angel of light. I don't believe in Satan
Yes,
anymore, but
right. And
metaphorically,
that
it's still an amazing saying.
it is. It's
Evil
so
is right
true.
there where you think your goodness comes from. That's
Yep.
where the evil is. Right? What you thought was making you safe is actually what's the danger?
That's just it. That is what I've come to the conclusion that the world that I grew up in that tried so hard to make us versus them,
Yeah,
that us is what was the most damaging to me than any time or any person I have been outside in the secular world.
absolutely.
I
And I'm
have actually found more healing in the secular world than I've ever found in the Christian world.
same. And I am only branching out into the secular world. I can't even think, I'm so bad with dates, but 3 or 4 years now, around that time period. Like I stayed in the bubble until I was like 40. I'm almost, how old am I? I'm almost 47. I'm almost 47 now. So, however long that is, 40 some years, I stayed in the bubble just fine and stuck my head in the sand. Didn't see any of it and kept going from cult to cult to cult to cult. And
And I almost wonder if it's because we have that sense of belonging. Like we have that so ingrained. We have that community.
yes,
And so we move from one to the other. And I was talking to my husband about this because he and I are the same, kind of like your husband, your all's relationship. We're very much a team. We do
yes,
everything exactly that, we're all together no matter what.
yes.
And we were talking and we're looking at leaving the church, which by the time this airs, we're going to be out. And so I'm like, whoo,
Yay, I'm
and
like so excited
yeah,
for
we're free. And so I'm like, I don't know if I want to go into another church because to me it's like leaving an abusive relationship and jumping right into a new relationship.
yeah, you're exactly right.
And I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that because I know now, like you, I'm having I'm having panic attacks, anxiety before going to church on Sundays. Like it's so bad. Like
Yeah.
I mentally cannot handle it. And it's just crazy. It's just,
I don't
you
know
know.
if you have a cutoff time because I have something I could say about that. Like,
No, we can go a little bit longer, another 15 minutes. I'm
okay,
having a great time.
you just cut it off whenever because I don't have to
Okay.
go. I have all the time in the world, but I know you know how it is. So.
I'm
But
good. I'm free.
I
So
just wanted to say, like, after this Southern Baptist church with the child molester, that whole thing, we felt very much like we should go to another church. I mean, we took some time off, a couple weeks, I think, not too terribly long, till we started looking at the churches. Like, we gotta find a church. Like, we gotta, so we did find one that was more progressive than Baptist. We thought, it turns out it was Acts 29. I don't know if you know that.
Oh, yep.
Goal and all that. Oh my gosh.
That's a whole different episode.
So this church, we ended up in, and we thought it was better. I think it was in some ways better, but often better is worse because it's just hides the problem more, because you think, oh, their teaching's better. But it was too late for us. We could see everything. As soon as we're like, oh my gosh, this is a cult. Like, they have covenant membership. That's a legally binding document that a lot of churches use in court against women who are trying to leave their husbands. And they'll say, oh no, you signed this, you're under our discipline. And courts have to acknowledge that. It's crazy.
Yep.
And yeah, now the stories we've heard coming out of that church, abusive marriages and how they've handled it, they're unbelievable. But anyway, we ended up there, and same as you're saying, like, I was just having panic attacks every Sunday again. I was wailing in the services, having to run out of the room into the bathroom and cry the whole service. Meanwhile, I had gotten diagnosed with Lyme disease, because I guess if you have an emotional trauma, it can, beat down your immune system, and then things that are latent take over. And
the body keeps score.
It does. And I think I've had Lyme my whole life to some extent, but it got really bad to where I thought I was having early Alzheimer's, because I was getting lost going familiar places. I was having false memories. I was having all these weird mental problems. And I was like, what is going on? And so I finally got diagnosed with Lyme disease and a bunch of co-infections. And anyway, doing much better now. Had that taken care of.
I'm glad.
I'm having this like physical breakdown on top of the mental breakdown. Like, everything's going at once. And I started therapy for the first time ever, which was so hard because I was taught therapy was so wrong. Yes. And it was just the first couple months. I mean, I was a wreck, but I knew I had to do something because I was losing it. And yeah, that was a whole terrifying experience. But she said to me, you really, I think, need to take a break from the church, because your body can't heal when you are re-traumatizing yourself every single week.
Yes.
Like, you cannot get well while you're doing that. Maybe just take a break. I'm like, yeah, okay. So I did, and that changed everything. That's when deconstruction started for me then, because I feel like I started to, after months of being out, deprogram. Not even trying, but I shut off messages, because I was like, well, if I even listen to a sermon, it makes me feel that way. So I cut off all the messages. I didn't read my Bible. I didn't. And when I did that for 3 months, I did it for 6 months. It actually ended up being forever. But at the end of 3 months, I could see a little bit of a difference. At the end of 6 months, I'm like, I'm not even the same person. And I just these beliefs no longer made any sense to me. And I really started to be able to question in a way, like, I thought I had questioned before, but I had, but not like always with but I got to stay with the word of God or Jesus. I have to hang on. Like, this allowed me, I just suddenly was like, yeah, I can really let go of everything and look at it and see if I believe it or not. And if I don't, I don't.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's been a wild road, but that was because of getting just the sickness and leaving just being for a while.
Yeah, I have fibromyalgia and chronic shingles because of all of the emotional and trauma and all that stuff. Like, and I have had shingles 7 times in 1 year.
Oh my word.
My doctor's like, nobody gets shingles. Like, I mean, of course they do, but like, it's rare that people get shingles that many times in a year. Like, it's chronically
I've never
It's so
either.
bad. Yeah, when I went to my doctor and they're like, "You're too young to have shingles," and then I like pulled up my shirt and they're like, "Oh, that's shingles." I'm like, "Well,
Yeah,
here we are. This has
yeah,
been a lifetime of complex trauma and religious trauma. Thank you very much."
right. And that is another whole episode. Right there is how religious trauma affects our physical health.
Yes.
It makes me so angry when I think of how poor my health is literally because of the teachings I grew up in.
Yeah. It makes me so angry. But I have to remind myself and to use a Bible terminology, give grace to myself
Yeah,
because I know I did the best what I had knew
right,
at the time.
right.
And now that I know so clearly the right thing is to get out, if I stay in, it's like it's just eating me alive.
And wanting to rescue other people. It's hard for me.
Yes.
I mean, that's not it necessarily like therapy wise. They tell you that's not the best thing either. Like you can't rescue everyone. Darn it, if I'm not gonna try.
Exactly.
I just want the world
Exactly.
to know. I'm like, this isn't even true what we were taught so much of this. Like,
Hmm.
there's so many layers to this that I never knew. And
Yeah.
our faith was not informed properly. I mean, I
No.
think it's fine people have faith, but I just want them to know, like, the truth about how the Bible was made. What's the history of that? What's the, you know, hell isn't even literally in the Bible. It's a mistranslation, and the words are Gehenna and I forget the other one, Hades, and things from Greek mythology, and
Exactly.
not even.
Hmm.
It was just used as a fear tactic.
It's all about control.
Oh my gosh,
White men in control.
seriously, and say that to a white man.
So, I mean, and really say that to a white woman that's still in.
Yeah, oh yes, this is true too. It's almost like
Because
calling someone a white man is an insult.
I know.
It's like, why do you hate being called that so much? I have a
Let's
bad
see.
connotation. I don't
I don't know. Exactly.
know. They go crazy.
Oh my gosh, yes. Well, I think that I definitely need to have you back on again. We have so many more topics that we
I
could
would
talk
love
about.
to. Yes, anytime. This is so great.
Yes, it's been so fun. And so plug anything you'd like to plug, your websites or anything that you recommend? I can put it down in the description for our
Yeah, I'll send
listeners.
it to you. I'm always so bad at this. I'm never prepared. But yeah, baptistaccountability.org is the database, which is searchable. You can search by any keyword, the church name, the person's name, the state, anything. Um, and then you can also make entries. There's a tab for making a new entry. And comments. I always forget to say that because that's not used very often, but when it is, it's really interesting. Comment on people that are already in there. There's a comment.
Ooh.
And some people have found like their abusers and made connections that way, which has been interesting. But it's very
Wow.
underused because we need to tweak it so that it's more noticeable. But that's a feature I keep meaning to plug of that. And then we have churchtrauma.org, and that's more just our personal story. I have some. I write a lot of poetry. I have some of it on there. Dom did the blog about our Narrowgate cult on there.
Hmm.
I have some other things about Oakwood Baptist Church from that was the Southern Baptist Church. That was also in USA Today. I can send you that. I'll
Oh
send
wow. Yeah, send me all of that. That would be great.
Yeah, there's a lot, and we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm not on TikTok yet for Baptist Accountability. I'm on there personally, but I don't do much. But anyway, it's pretty searchable. But I'll give you all the handles to put in rather than rattle them off because I don't know them offhand. But yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you,
Well,
Amber.
thank you. I'm so excited that you were here. I had such a great time.
I
Your
did.
story, like, was really encouraging to me. Like, I actually related to so much of that.
I was
I'm sitting there, like, checking off, like, so many boxes in my head.
well as we're saying this. I'm like, well, now I need to hear your story. So let me ask you this: do you have anywhere
Yes.
where your story is told? If not, maybe I can interview you on your podcast. to interview you.
I actually plan on putting my story on the channel.
Okay,
Do a
good.
series of my story on the channel because I'm gonna have to break it down in sections because there's just so much.
And that's how I feel
But
about mine. I gave you like the
I know,
and
like we got the
so,
little
so long.
capsuled version. Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was just
Well,
fascinating
let me
and
know
just
when you do that because I
impressive.
really want to hear everything, like your details.
Yes, I definitely will. And thank you guys for listening today and checking in. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share the channel. And if you have your own story, fill out. You can. Sorry, I can't even talk today. I'm so excited. If you have your own story that you want to share, if you'd like to be interviewed, the description box below will have information on how to get a hold of me to do that. And again, thank you for your time, and we will talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye.